This is our moment to lift your name. We lift your name higher. This is our time. This is our place. This is our moment to lift your name.
Radio La Roca 106.3 FM. Radio La Roca.
This is WIPULP, Pembroke Pines, Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, the Rock Church.
Welcome to the Ryan Crossley Show. It is now the year 2022, and we are excited to get this year kicked off. Here we are, first show of the year. I was kind of gone for 2 weeks. I apologize for my little hiatus, but we needed family time. We needed to get away. We needed to close out the year the way that a family should. And so I apologize for not being here the last 2 weeks, but I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year's. I hope you had a great end of the year. We're able to wrap things up that you needed to wrap up and hopefully look forward to this year and what we are going to accomplish. Now, this year is going to be a big year. I'm excited about this year on the Ryan Crossley Show. We have, this is going to be one of the most important years of our lives. I believe that. I believe that 2022 is going to be one of the most important years of our lives because it is election year. And if we don't turn this ship around quick, we might just sail off into oblivion and not be able to recuperate so many things that have been lost in this last year. So I think that if there was ever a time for you to be paying attention and to be plugged in, you know, a lot of times we talk and complain, but we don't put anything into action. And so this year is a year of action. It's a year of doing something, communicating with somebody, informing yourself, making sure you know what is really going on. So we are excited. Welcome to the Ryan Crossley Show. Those of you that are online, thank you for connecting with us on YouTube. Thank you for connecting with us on our Facebook page, Iglesia La Roca de Hollywood, as a church, and also our radio page, Radio La Roca. We're excited. Thank you for plugging in. Please feel free to comment, to leave us anything you can for us to interact. We greet you all and thank you for being with us. Si usted habla español, yo tengo mi programa político en español los martes de 7 a 9 de la mañana. If you speak Spanish, I do a political show, talk show, Tuesday mornings from 7 to 9. So we desperately need this year to understand how critical it is that we win the House and the Senate back. Now, we have a pretty good chance of doing that. I'm talking about those that have conservative values. We have a pretty good chance of doing that. There's a lot of retirements going to be going on in the Democratic Party. If you've been paying attention, I hope to God that Nancy Pelosi retires. That would be the greatest. I don't know. You know, mean people live a long time. It just seems like mean people live a long time. I don't understand it. But we have a good chance with the amount of retirements and above and beyond all that, the absolute disaster that has been this administration. I hope, it is my prayer that America wakes up, returns back to its values, or not just returns back to its values, but maybe they already have those values, but they say, you know what? I can't just have these values and be silent. I have to do something about these values. I need to make sure that I am being a voice and I am making a difference in this world. So we've got some very important elections even here in the state of Florida. We have some senators. I believe Marco Rubio is up for re-election. We've got several that we want to make sure that that we are able to take back the power in government. And it's not, in my point of view, it's not because we want power. It's because we've got to stop what's going on. This is getting absolutely ridiculous. It just does. It is like the world. It's like the political world has lost its mind. There's not even a logical approach. It seems like the concept. It seems like the game plan is this. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like they get together and the game plan is, what else can we do to destroy our country? Let's do that. That seems to be the game plan. What else can we do to destroy the economy? Yes, let's do that. What else can we do to ruin people's lives? Yes, let's do that. What else can we do to invade people's privacy? Yes, that would be a great thing to do. It seems to be that is the game plan. And here we go again. You know, before I get into, I've got some articles that I want to go through today. But before I do that, there is one word. I'll tell you one of the main reasons that I feel we need to, where we need to take back the House and the Senate. There's one word that has come to my mind in the last couple of days. It's just really strong last night, today, this morning, as I was thinking about this show, and that is the word accountability. Accountability. Somebody has got to be held accountable for what is going on. You and I, as individuals, could never get away with the garbage that so many of these politicians have gotten away with in this last year. It is absolutely insane. Well, let's go last 2 years, especially dealing with the COVID crisis. We could never get away with lying to Congress, and yet we have noted on video, recorded, lying to Congress, and then evidence coming out verifying that. So, sorry, did not silence my phone. So yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about there is no accountability. And one of the main reasons that I want to win back the government is to stop the craziness, get some sense back into government, get some logic back into the decisions that we're making, try and reverse some of this course of craziness, but also accountability. Some people have got to be held accountable. They've got to be held accountable. You cannot mess with people's lives. You cannot ruin their economy. You cannot ruin the lives of children. And here we go again in Chicago, and several, Milwaukee, and several liberal bastions of our country that are, again, they could care less about the damage they're doing to your kids. It's just a political ploy. It's a control tactic, and it's absolutely insane. We need to hold some people accountable. It is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm so tired of all of just the wokeness. I'm so tired of the things that that are taking place. And I think that we've got to speak up. This is our year. If we don't do something this year, folks, if we have to deal with an entire presidency of Biden with a Democratic liberal Congress and Senate, we're sunk. So we better turn it around. So whoever your candidate's going to be, inform yourself and don't depend 100% on just simply whatever you hear coming through the mainstream media. Educate yourself. One of the trends that's happening, I don't know if you've noticed this, but one of the trends that is happening is big names are heading away from big tech. And I think that's awesome. That's what needs to happen. Big names need to head away from big tech. Joe Rogan is one of the most influential people in social media, and he is so sick and tired of what he's seeing and the censorship and all of that he moved over to Getter. Senator Rand Paul, who is, to me, if there's anybody that has made the most sense through this whole thing, is Senator Rand Paul. I really appreciate his words. I appreciate that he's taken on Fauci and not worried about the backlash, and he's the one actually that has exposed Fauci's lies. The Pinocchio lies that he has told. I appreciate Senator Rand Paul, and he has made a decision to leave some of the big platforms of big tech, and he's going over, I think, to Rumble and Getter also. So we're probably going to be doing the same, just to be on more platforms, and I do appreciate every platform that we've been able to be on. But those big names moving away from big tech hopefully will help us to where the market will not depend on just the huge big tech companies that dominate everything. A free market is good. We want competition. We should be able to have competition. We should not allow monopolization and just the squashing of any upstart. That's what was really aggravating. You remember Parler? Remember when Parler was trying to rise up? And how they were squashed by big tech. We don't need that. We need competition. That is the beauty of free speech society. That's the beauty of our country. We need that competition. We need that to happen. So I do want to greet some folks that are faithful listeners. We are so thankful that Michelle Aquino, we love you, girl, was just up in Kissimmee. We appreciate them. Daniel Barba, love Brother Daniel. He's a great man here in our church. And just happy to have him connected. And then Manny Salmeron, faithful listener, he says Pelosi would retire in Florida. Talking about these progressives bashing Florida all the time, it's amazing how when they come here, they like to not have to wear their mask and live in the freedom that Florida has. Knock, knock, AOC. She loved to bash Florida. She loved to bash Ron DeSantis. But, man, she sure enjoyed not having to wear her mask while she was here. Bunch of hypocrites. They've never lived by their own rules. So, yeah, Florida's become probably, I think DeSantis said it the other day, Florida's become the freest state in the nation. I believe it. I'm so thankful for Governor DeSantis. He has done an incredible job, and we need to make sure that he stays strong. We need to pray for him and his family. You know, the left has become so vicious and so vile. It really bugs me. It's become very vicious, very vile. If you read throughout this week some articles that came out, the left was bashing DeSantis for being MIA, to being missing in action. Here it is, all this COVID is happening, and he's not even around. Well, you know, they didn't ever take the time to investigate and consider exactly what the man was doing, and the man was being an example to everybody with what he was doing, and that is he was with his wife during some of her cancer treatments. I mean, come on. How low do you have to go? How base do you have to be to bash a man for being a great husband and supportive? It just goes so far sometimes that it blows your mind. The Bible talks about they call evil good and good evil. We are living in those days 100%. They call evil good and good evil. If you do something that is malignant, that is destructive, but you're of a certain group and a certain party, man, you're excused. You can do whatever you want. You're excused. You can burn down buildings. You can rob. You can loot. You can pillage. You can violate. You can do all of that. As long as you're from a certain group and a certain party or a certain inclination, you're okay. You're excused. But if you're not from that, man, you are intolerant. You are a fascist. You are every kind of phobe that they want to name you. They just throw it out. You're a racist. It's absolutely crazy. So we are living in the days where they call evil good and good evil. And we need to understand that. We need to understand that so that we don't get duped. You cannot get duped. You gotta be a little bit smart in these days. So I want to share with you something. If you haven't been paying attention lately in the news, there's a doctor that I believe you should be paying a lot of attention to, and that is Dr. Peter McCullough. He was on the Joe Rogan show actually, and I think a friend of mine and a minister in this church, Jonathan, that sent me the podcast. But he was interviewed for a lengthy time on Joe Rogan's show, Dr. Peter McCullough, and he has also now been doing several interviews in even mainstream media, and you need to pay attention to what he's saying, because I was talking about accountability. I'm telling you, somebody has got to be held accountable. Somebody's got to go to jail. I know that sounds really terrible coming from me, but somebody's got to pay the price. Somebody's got to go to jail. You and I could not get away with what they have gotten away with and not pay consequences. We would have to pay consequences. And one of the things that Peter McCullough has brought to light is this, is that at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a concentrated effort to suppress what were the early treatment options for COVID-19. In other words, what are we saying? In other words, there were treatments, there were therapeutics, there was things that were already out there that could have saved a lot of people's lives. But there was a concentrated effort by the powers that now are pushing all of the vaccine mandates, and I mean it's like they are just so with blinders on. Vaccine. There's nothing else. No, just vaccine. Those people suppressed. Dr. Fauci being one of the. Dr. Fauci needs to pay some consequences. I read something the other day. I'm getting distracted on a sidebar here, but do you know that the highest paid employee in the federal government is Dr. Fauci? I read that the other day. I thought that was pretty interesting. He is, because of his age and his position and what he's done, he is in line to have the largest pension ever from a retired government employee. He makes way more than the president does in his yearly salary. I thought that was quite interesting. You ever wonder why some people have so much influence, so much power? Just follow the money, right? But Dr. Fauci has blatantly flip-flopped over and over and again, moved the goalpost, and flat out lied before Congress about the NIH not funding gain-of-function research in the Wuhan lab. But here's what Peter McCullough is saying, and there's an article I found it in Clark County today, but it's written by. Let me see here. It looks like it's Heidi Weisler is the administrator, but she talks about what Dr. Peter McCullough was saying. And so I'm going to just basically lay it out. I like the way that it's written. It says, if you walked into your doctor's office with a case of shingles, what do you think would happen? Would you be sent home and instructed to return when the pain was unbearable? Or would you be treated on the spot? While there is no cure for shingles, prompt treatment with prescription antiviral drugs can speed healing and reduce the risk complications. In other words, what she's saying is there's no cure for it, but there is some treatment that can speed up the healing and reduce the risk of complications. So you don't say, sorry, there's no cure, we can't give you anything. What about viral pneumonia, viral hepatitis, or HIV/AIDS? Same question. If you went into hospital, would you be treated? The answer, of course, is yes, because all of these things have treatment protocols to speed up recovery, to increase comfort, even though, please listen to me, even though viruses don't necessarily have cures. We have to understand that. That's why when President Biden got up and he said that he was going to kill the virus, he was going to squash it, he was going to eliminate it. Baloney. Here we are a year later, more deaths under him than under Trump. And Trump had to deal with it basically for 2 years. More deaths under him. Didn't squash nothing. The entire nation is going to get Omicron, like it or not. If you're listening to me, you're going to get Omicron. It's all over the place. And I don't mean that in a facetious way. I'm just serious. Everybody's going to get it. It's highly contagious. But it's like a very mild flu, really, to be honest with you. I know. You say, well, how do you know? I had it. And it's a very mild flu. I had the first round of COVID-19. I was 13 days with 103 fever. Thank God I never had the respiratory problems. And I can tell you right now, Omicron was like a chihuahua compared to a Rottweiler. My body aches lasted not even a day. I had fever maybe for a couple hours, slept it off, and just have had a little bit of congestion. That's it. As the time has gone on. So nothing, in Spanish we say nada que ver, nothing to do one with the other as far as how serious it is. And yet we're overreacting like it's a new pandemic that's coming along. It's not. And I actually want to read something as to what is going on. Why so much push for vaccination when it's diminishing. The symptoms are diminishing. Death rates are down 75%. I mean, death rates are down 75%. So more people are getting right now, I think they calculated 95% of those that are getting COVID, it's the Omicron variant. So 95% of the new cases are Omicron, but deaths are down 75%. So it's natural. This is the natural process of a virus. And I don't know why that flew out the window with this thing, but there is a natural progression, which in all honesty, I believe that because of the way things have been handled, the natural progression has been impeded, the natural progression has been altered, and we've had worse consequences because we tried to fix things that are unfixable and didn't do what they were doing here. The article, viruses, here's what it says, because viruses don't respond to antibiotics. Alternative treatments are important. They all work best when started early. So why do we have a fatal viral infection ravaging the world with barely any mention of ambulatory treatment? So there's no mention of ambulatory treatment, of therapeutics. No. Dr. Peter McCullough said, I don't know if you remember, March 15 was the date, right? 15 days to flatten the curve. Everything shut down. And then it never came back to normality. But what McCullough said was as soon as April, so March, everything shut down. And he said as soon as April, in the medical community and the powers that be, immediately they started talking about the only solution to this was a vaccine. All the while, there were other methods of treatment that could have saved, McCullough calculates, could have saved probably 85% of the people that have died. So I'm going to continue with the article here. Millions of people have tested positive for COVID-19 and are promptly sent home to quarantine and self-monitor their symptoms. No healthcare professional checks in on them. They are told to stay home and only come back if they are having trouble breathing. While I would imagine it is common knowledge in the medical community that early treatment for any ailment greatly improves the chance of a favorable outcome, why is there a virtual blackout of information surrounding the global conversation of early treatment protocol in order to avoid hospitalization and death? Controlling the healthy with masks and social distancing and now vaccines, and then Herculean efforts involving the critically ill have taken up all of the air. That's all that you've heard about. While the person in their first 2 weeks of the infection suffering at home is all but ignored by the medical community, which is the time where they could easily be treated with things that are already existent. Okay, here we go. Dr. Peter McCullough, Vice Chief of Internal Medicine at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, Texas, and the most prolifically published academic physician in his field of heart and kidneys in history, so there's no newbie here, has testified several times lately that there is a shocking suppression of early treatment for COVID-19 in medical literature. This is what he's saying. So he was speaking of this in early 2020, but now he is talking about it again, and he is letting us know that there was a concentrated effort. Now, he's been careful of how he says it because, I'm sure that he's taken some big risks. But the point of it is, here's what he says. There was a concentrated effort. Here we go. There was a shocking suppression of early treatment for COVID-19 in medical literature. A review of several of his communications resulted in this summary of his findings. He calls this effort to suppress any hope of treatment extraordinary. It was extraordinary that they would suppress treatments that were already available. All of the patients that he sees are considered high risk, and with the sequenced multi-drug approach he uses, he has only lost 2. I want you to listen to what we just said, and he's been talking about this. He only lost 2 patients. He wasn't vaccinating them. He was giving them a multi-drug approach use of drugs that already existed before this whole thing even began. When he extrapolates the data he has personally acquired through treating his own very ill patients. You know what I like about this? Here's the reason I would listen to a Peter McCullough as opposed to some talking egghead up in Washington, D.C. Because Peter McCullough actually was on the front lines treating COVID-19 patients. He had a hands-on view. He looked in their eyes. He dealt with them. He listened to them, and he responded and treated them. I'd much rather listen to that guy than some guy that's in a laboratory with a bunch of rats trying to play with my life. Sorry, but it gets me fired up. So when he was treating his own very ill patients, calculates what that would mean for the death rate worldwide if a similar treatment protocol was adopted globally. An astonishing 85% of COVID-19 deaths could have been prevented. I have friends, folks. I mean, I do believe in God's sovereignty, 100%. So I prayed desperately for some very close friends that passed away from COVID. And this may sound strange coming from a pastor, but I don't believe God just simply inserts himself in every single human situation. I think sometimes we are the victims of our own decisions and our own actions. And while we pray for people and we believe God for miracles and healings and signs and wonders, and we have faith gets us through things. Even if a loved one is lost, our faith gets us through it. My faith got me through the loss of a very close friend during this whole thing. But I am going to say something. I do believe that if he would have been treated early on, he might have had a better chance. I don't, I can't say, okay, I got to deviate from the article, because I want to say something about God's will. Sometimes when we can't explain something, we say, well, that must just be God's will. And I think that's very dangerous. Not everything is God's will. A lot of times it is our will. God will not violate the human will. He will not trump the free will of a human being. You decide what you're going to do. I'll give you an example. Biblically, the Bible says that it is not his will that any man should perish, but that all should come to everlasting life. That's what the Bible says. So it is not God's will for any man to perish and be lost. He wants every man to come to repentance and to be saved from their wicked ways. That's God's will. But there are still a whole lot of people that are not repenting and that are not making that decision. And we know it's not God's will for them to be lost. And yet they will be lost if they don't repent. So we cannot just simply say, well, everything that happens in life, it must be God's will. I think God is sovereign and he can do what only he can do. And we have faith for that. But he has left a whole lot of things up to the human will. You have to decide to repent. You have to decide to make a life change. You have to decide to be a good person in this life. You decide. God is not going to twist your arm. And so I do believe that even though we pray and we have faith, there's also a human factor of human actions and the consequences that follow that. And so what McCullough is saying is, according to the data that he could extrapolate, and here's the problem. You know what happened? Here's the problem. They refused. They absolutely refused to even give these therapeutics a chance. They refused. Why? There was an agenda. And here we are, 2 years later, dealing with this agenda of control, manipulation, and the biggest power grab in American history. The chaos has been caused to be able to control things how they want to control them. Imagine if 85% of the COVID deaths could have been prevented. The key is that treatment must begin early in order to avoid hospitalization. And that is the opposite of what has happened and is continuing to happen. Here we go. The treatment regimen includes, this is what McCullough was doing. Okay, now McCullough was doing this at the very beginning, and he only lost 2 people. It includes 4 to 6 drugs taken in a specific time frame, starting with, watch this, starting with monoclonal antibodies. Did you hear anything about monoclonal antibodies in 2019? No, you didn't. You didn't. We just started really hearing about monoclonal antibodies in mainstream media last year. But you know what the problem is with monoclonal antibodies right now? It's been federalized. Who owns all the monoclonal antibodies? Who has them all in their power? The federal government. Now, why is this a problem? I'll tell you why this is a problem. Because our president, Joe Biden, says the other day that there's nothing the federal government can do, that the responsibility of this now lies on the states. This is coming from the guy that was going to eradicate COVID. This is coming from the guy that promised you that he would be bigger, badder, and better than Trump ever was against the virus, and that has not proven to be true. And now the man just raised up his white flag, lost complete and total control of this thing, and threw up his hands and said, well, really, it's not, the federal government cannot solve this problem. This problem is going to have to be solved at the state level. Well, what the problem with that is, all the monoclonal antibodies are owned by the federal government, and they don't want to release them or sell them to the states, especially certain states that are not liberal states, states that are conservative, that are actually pushing the monoclonal antibodies instead of just vaccinations. They don't want to sell it to them. And I don't want to sound wrong. Not only that, you talk about going backwards. You talk about going backwards. Look at what's happening in New York, where they are the monoclonal antibodies that they get, they are not going to give to white people. Now, to me, I don't care what color you are. But if you're sick and you need the monoclonal antibodies, let's get them to you. White, black, brown, yellow, I don't care. You just need them because you're sick. It should not be based on race. You talk about going backwards. We're with CRT, with these decisions. And here's the thing, people, please wake up. Please wake up. This stuff, this racial divide, is not coming from conservative minds. It's not coming from the Republican Party. It's coming from the Democrats. It's coming from the liberal wing. It's sowing those seeds to take us back. We had advanced so far, and it's taken us back like so many years. It's unbelievable. So here's what it says. The treatment regimen includes 4 to 6 drugs taken in a specific time frame, starting with monoclonal antibodies, then antivirals, then anti-inflammatories, and then anticoagulants. Now, if you know what the effects have been on the body, this makes absolute and total sense. It is recommended that anyone over 50 with at least one comorbidity begin this course of treatment immediately. Reduction of viral replication, that's the whole thing with even I think with ivermectin. Reduction of viral replication and hydroxychloroquine at the forefront of infection is key. There has been unconventional concern worldwide regarding the safety of certain therapeutics for this virus. In fact, in Australia, watch this. Australia, by the way, you want to talk about people that have just gone bonkers with the COVID stuff. Watch what's happening in Australia with their quarantine camps. There has been unconventional concern worldwide regarding the safety of certain therapeutics for this virus. In fact, in Australia, doctors were threatened with a 6-month prison sentence if they dared to prescribe the antiviral hydroxychloroquine. Why? Hydroxychloroquine was not dangerous. It was not a danger. There is practically little to no side effects that would endanger anybody. We've been using this drug for decades. It's been used before against SARS type virus as a therapeutic, and they were going to be threatened. Listen, people are dying, right? I mean, people are dying. They're being intubated, and you're not willing to use something that really, if it were to fail, which it didn't in those that used it in time, if it were to fail, you're not going to kill the patient because the drug has been proven to not cause that. So why not try something when you know it could possibly save a life? It's only because you have an agenda. So they were threatened with 6 months of prison. Here's what they said. The use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 is off-label, they said. But off-label use of older medicines for new uses occurs every day. In fact, 20% of all prescriptions in the U.S. are written for off-label uses when a doctor thinks a medicine will benefit a patient. Apparently, the list of what not to use is long and broad within the treatment recommendations. This is back. We are 16 months into this thing, and as of yet, there are 0 trials of multi-drug therapies. There is no national or global panel of doctors in charge of early treatment protocol. Why? Maybe it's because a vaccine is only allowed to be produced if there are no effective treatments. Okay, this is huge. Okay, I was listening to it all, and I want to continue here, but to me, this is huge. Why did they do what they did? Why did they not use hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin? I mean, you could talk about remdesivir. Why did they refuse? In fact, if you want to go look at Rogan's interview with McCullough said that mysteriously, the second largest factory that produced hydroxychloroquine was burned down. At the beginning of this. There was so many different things that were happening. It was a concentrated effort, suppression worldwide, to not allow things that were, this was, when it's an off-label use drug, what that means is you could have gone to the pharmacy and you could have got that drug yourself as a regular person, got in, and you could have gotten hydroxychloroquine. When this happened, and McCullough wouldn't say this because he didn't want to speculate or maybe be called a conspiracy theorist, but he was asked whether he felt like the reason that all of a sudden the clamp down came on hydroxychloroquine was because President Trump started mentioning it, and it was just a hatred towards Trump, because Trump said, hey, this is a miracle. We have something that works. And immediately after that, I mean, it shut down. Do you remember the doctors that were standing on the steps of the Capitol and they were talking about it? They were ridiculed. They were banned. They were censored. It was unbelievable what was happening. Have you ever asked yourself why? And here's the huge thing. You cannot be allowed to produce a vaccine in the medical community. There's protocols. You're not allowed to produce a vaccine if there are other treatments that work. Okay? And so they had to make sure that there was no other treatments that worked. But that's a lie. There was other treatments that worked to help patients deal with this. But they suppressed that. Now, why does that make me mad? That means that there are people that died that shouldn't have died, should not have died. But they died because early on when this happened, even as early as April or who knows before, there was already an agenda to get we're going to deal with this with the vaccine. And so in order to do that, they had to shut down every other avenue of treatment. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it blew my mind. People would go to the hospital and they would immediately intubate them. I mean, that was like intubate them. And you know, we were grasping at straws. We had to get all of these machines built and done. And when there are a lot of other treatments that should be done first for respiratory issues than just a straight intubation. Because when you intubate, now I'm not a doctor, but when you intubate somebody, you are basically kind of telling that body to die in peace. Not only that, when they're intubated, they're given paralytic medicines so that they don't pull anything out or anything like that. So if the individual wanted to fight for their lives or wanted to communicate something to a doctor or to a loved one, they aren't able to do it because now they have given them paralytic medicine. It was a recipe for disaster. But the most horrible thing was there are several other treatments for somebody that's having breathing issues than just immediately throwing them on a ventilator. So let's go back here. The conversation around building up one's own immune system is also nearly non-existent in medical and mainstream circles. I don't know why this has been so ignored. See, I've been a strong proponent, and I want to, before the show is over today, I want to lead you to somebody that I think you need to go to their website and you need to check it out. I have been a strong proponent of what is our own immune system fighting this battle, natural immunity. See, how does a virus fade out? You can't kill a virus. That's why this whole thing about the vaccine, it's going to kill the virus. No, it's not. You can't do that. We have all these mutations. Now, I just read something on Fox News just like 2 minutes ago. COVID-19 variant with 46 mutations detected in France. Well, here's what happens. What a headline, right? And I love Fox News, but what a stupid headline. 46 mutations. What does that do? That instills fear. Oh my goodness, another variant with 46 mutations. We're all going to die. But if you go and read the article, that's why I don't like the headline. If you go and read the article, a virologist in London took to Twitter to talk about this new variant, the IHU variant, and said it's definitely not one worth worrying about too much at the moment. In other words, it's even weaker than Omicron. We're talking about basically nothing. And so now we have gotten to the point where we're making much ado about nothing. But this is a problem that has been what has been missing is the talk about our own immune system fighting this. The more a virus goes through bodies, the weaker it gets. The more it mutates, the weaker it gets. That's been proven. I don't have to make that up. That's been proven with COVID-19. The more it mutates, the weaker it gets. It's not as potent as it was before. That's the natural progression of a virus in a community. But what we have done, here's what we have done. We have hijacked a natural process. We have elongated the time. We have caused more death. And probably the most damaging thing is we have destroyed society. Mental illness is at an all-time high. Depression, suicide, all-time high. Kids not being able to go to school and socialize with other kids. It's destroying their lives. Who knows? We cannot even measure the repercussions. Not only that, and I'm going to get lambasted for this, the whole mask thing. You know how damaging? I personally believe in several years, we're going to have all kinds of people having lung problems, having respiratory issues. You cannot breathe your own carbon dioxide. You can't breathe that stuff 8 to 10 hours a day in a mask and it not damage you. You're not even supposed to be you're not supposed to be breathing anything that's more than 2,000 particles per million. And when you have one of these tight masks on, you're up over 14,000 particles per million. That's what people have been breathing. So we totally ignored the conversation about natural immunity. And the answer has been a vaccine, right? And so McCullough is, here's what it says, a study conducted from March through June 2020, including 191,000 patients in the U.S., found that vitamin D deficiency increased the risk of acquiring COVID by 54.5%. Additionally, 80% of the people with COVID-19 didn't have adequate levels of the vitamin in their blood. This is a very wildly important piece of information doctors should be shouting from the rooftops. Zinc is also critical as it helps block the virus from multiplying. An adult treatment guide put out by Yale University cites a lack of clinical data to support the effectiveness of various vitamins in medicine. It is high time for the medical community to be implementing trials of all kinds, gathering such data. But the sole focus today seems to be a one-size-fits-all vaccine campaign instead of strengthening one's immune system and finding effective treatments. All of the eggs in the proverbial COVID-19 basket seem to be filled with only one treatment, the vaccine. And here's what's disastrous about the vaccines. The pharmaceutical companies have proprietary immunity in their vaccines. You need to read, I have an article right here. I don't know if you want to hear it or not, but here we go from Reuters. This is September 1st, 2021, so it's back last year a little ways. But Moderna, to recall, here's what the article says. Moderna to recall COVID-19 doses in Japan after stainless steel contaminants found. Stainless steel in the vaccine. They're working to recall 3 batches of COVID-19 vaccine after investigation found stainless steel contaminants in some vials. It's just a little bit. Okay. Japanese authorities had suspended use of these batches of Moderna shots. Moderna, okay? We're not some unknown company, probably the front runner of all the vaccines. Suspended use of these batches of Moderna shots containing 1.63 million doses. 1.63 million doses with some stainless steel in them could have been injected into people. Then you want to ask me why I'm a little skeptical of the vaccine. Most probable cause of contamination was related to friction between 2 pieces of metal in the machinery that put stoppers on the vial. Moderna said in the joint statement with Takeda that the material was confirmed to be stainless steel. Now, here's what they said. Stainless steel is routinely used in heart valves, joint replacements, and metal sutures and staples. As such, it is not expected that injection, there you go, it's not expected, that injection of the particles identified in these lots in Japan would result in increased medical risk. But it's enough for you to recall them because you realize this is not good. You want to know why they recalled them? The reason they recalled them was they had 2 men that were in their mid-30s that died after taking the Moderna doses. The contamination issue gained more attention after the health ministry said on Saturday that 2 men aged 33 and 30 died in August within days of receiving their second Moderna doses, and each had received a dose from one of the suspended lots. Cause of death in the 2 cases is still being investigated. About 500,000 people have received shots from the 3 suspended Moderna batches. So 500,000 people got stainless steel injected into their bodies. This is absolutely nuts. When there are treatments that work, why was it shut down? It was shut down because they wanted to push their vaccines. And I don't have time to get into it today. I'm going to have to get into it next week. But you need to go to a website, and I'm going to kind of finish up with this. You need to go to a website that is called Voice for Science and Solidarity. Voice for Science and Solidarity. And you're going to read several articles there. There's all kinds of information that you need to get there. Voice for Science and Solidarity.com, I believe. But it's so much. I just want to read one portion. But it's Geert Vanden Bosch, that he is talking about something that is important. I have 2 articles here by him. I don't have time to get into he talks about child vaccination and how dangerous that actually is. You realize that by vaccinating your children, you are hijacking their immune system and you are making them more vulnerable to other sicknesses. That's what's happening. So you need to be very careful. But the question on the article, December 9th, 2021, by Geert Vanden Bosch is this. Will mass vaccination against Omicron give the final blow? Will mass vaccination against Omicron give the final blow? And this is, I'm just going to read, he encapsulated it here in one sentence. He says, mass vaccination against Omicron will take away. Now, this is, let me just pause and say, this is a man that has worked in the vaccine world pretty much all of his medical career. So if there's anybody who knows vaccines, Geert Vanden Bosch knows vaccines. And he says, mass vaccination against Omicron will take away our very last opportunity to prevent SARS-CoV-2 from making a natural selection in favor of hosts who have preserved a fully functional innate immune defense. That is what has been argued. Now, I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't know if you read this little snippet yesterday, but a liberal anchor from MSNBC wanted to go to a restaurant in New York, and he had his 4-year-old child with him. And I think it's horrible what happened. They would not let him eat at the restaurant because his 4-year-old daughter, I believe, was not vaccinated. They're pushing vaccines from 5 years old and up. And so he argued, his argument was there are no vaccines available for my 4-year-old. She cannot be vaccinated. But it didn't matter. The restaurant kicked him out anyway, and he was fuming. He was upset about it. But if you read the details of what he said, we are all fully vaccinated and or have already had COVID, such as myself. So what was the argument of this liberal MSNBC anchor? He said, listen, in our crew, either we have been vaccinated or we already had COVID and we have immunity. That is the piece of information I thought was very interesting, that I'm sure, being on MSNBC, has been a big proponent of all the vaccinations, obviously because his family is vaccinated, except for his 4-year-old daughter because of her age. But when it came down to it, he said, I already had COVID, so I've got the antibodies. And that's what Omicron's going to do for us. Omicron is going to just give you some more antibodies. That's the natural progression. So what has happened is we have completely ignored the natural progression and the way that immunity works. We have ignored preventative therapeutics that could have saved 85% of the lives, according to Peter McCullough. And we have just been on this brutal, illogical, undisciplined, crazy path of vaccination. We're talking people are already getting a 4th dose of a shot. It's not working. Biden said that this was a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and he's been proven wrong now, obviously. So when are we going to realize that what there is an agenda that is just simply trying to control your lives? And we've got to reverse course. If we don't reverse course, then we are going to just simply always let ourselves be controlled by those powers that be. How is it? How is it possible? You think about it. Somebody's got to. That's why I said accountability. Who did this? Who were the powers that shut down the supplies of hydroxychloroquine, that refused? 6 months of prison. I remember here in the United States, if you were going to prescribe hydroxychloroquine to a patient, the doctors were risking their careers. They were going to be let go. Why? Because there was an agenda. You could not produce a vaccine unless they could declare there was no other treatments. And that was the biggest, fattest lie of this whole thing. There were other treatments, but they wanted to do a vaccine. Why? Money, I'm sure. You know how many billions of dollars? There's been 7 new billionaires made through this. You know how much money the pharmaceutical companies have made? Control, because Washington, D.C. is all about power. Their drug is not money, it's power. And who are the ones that have suffered throughout this? Mom and pop at home. You and I. Now, you're talking so much invasion of privacy. I don't even have time to get in it. But now, through Biden's Restore America, whatever plan, I don't have it right here in front of me. They want to, if you send money through Venmo or Zelle, over $600 to somebody, you're going to be investigated. Hired 70,000 more IRS agents. Why? Why? Because you are the target. You are the target. They want to control you. So, folks, this is a very important year. We need to vote in people that are going to fight for us. We need to vote in people that are going to make sure that this thing gets turned around. We got a very, very big and important year ahead of us. go to this website, Voice for Signs and Solidarity. I'm actually hoping that I can get Mr. Bosch on the show. But inform yourself, and let's make a difference. Let's do something. Let's do something with the life that God has given us. God bless you. God bless America. We'll see you next week here on the Ryan Crossley Show.